got our wort to a boil now. It only took about 20 minutes. A lot of water to boil.
Yeah.
So we add, this particular recipe has 2 sets of hops. It's got the same type, but you're actually going to add at different points in the boiling process. One at the very beginning and one at about 30 minutes. And what that does is the chemical that gets extracted from the hops that adds that bitterness of the beer, it also, as you cook it, will go through a chemical process as well. So we are...
Now, at the end, you don't actually keep the hops in, right? Do you actually...
No, and when we drain this off into our fermenter, we're going to not drain all of it. We're going to let the rest of the hops sit at the bottom of the...
Okay.
So we're not going to drain everything, just like, you know, other things, yeah, whenever you pour off. So we put in the hops. I'm going to start the timer for 30 minutes to remind me to add the extra hops. Give it a little bit of a stir.
Now, do you actually ever cover any of this or anything, or you just leave it over?
We're going to cover it... I don't think we're going to cover this one, actually.
Okay.
If we had been brewing in this one originally, then we would be covering it, but since we didn't, we're not.
Well, the game's in. And it does. I mean,
And now smell this compared to the sweet wort. You're going to get more of a beer smell.
Yeah, it does.
To it. So
I mean,
now we wait.
Yeah. more of the waiting.
At this point, it's cooled to below. It's probably about 90 to 95 degrees right now. So what we're going to do is get our yeast ready. What we do is we activate the yeast, which is basically, and I'm just using a dry yeast. This particular yeast I used this on my last batch, talking to the one of the gentlemen at the brew shop, and we were talking about how this particular yeast actually forms, you know, it settles down at the bottom of the fermenter and forms into almost a pancake, which makes it very easy to deal with. Okay. So it's the Cephale S04. And like I said, I liked it last time, and he said he's been very impressed by it as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and activate it. And what I've got here is water. I just microwaved it so it's warm, 90-ish degrees.
So by the way, we actually are working off a set of instructions that we have. This is not winging it whatsoever. It is an exact science. You don't want to mess anything up because you might mess up the flavor of the beer, you might mess up the process of the beer.
The other thing you can do is actually contaminate the beer with bacteria. Yeast likes sugar, it likes, you know, room temperature, 60, 70 degree temperatures. Just so happens bacteria love the same thing. So sanitation is very, very important. Following the guidelines, everything I sanitized, and all my plastic things I sanitized in iodine water, which is, you know, certified as an appropriate sanitizer. Bleach is appropriate. We let the yeast sit for a little bit, starting to turn in, instead of the little granules of freeze-dried yeast, it's turned into kind of a pasty.
Yeah, it looks like a creamy. It looks like a cream. I mean, that's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, if you look at the very bottom though, there's that pancakey thing that I was talking about.
Yeah.
And then we haven't let it sit for that long, so it hasn't actually solidified like it will in the fermenter, which I assume we're going to film in further detail later. But that's where it's at. So we have here our chilled wort, which is about 90 degrees.
And it smells more like beer than it did before. It lacks that more grainy smell that was just the pure the grains that you had earlier. I mean, with the combination of the hops and everything. I'm sorry, I'm gonna stick my nose in there.
That's all right. So we've got just a fermenting bucket. It's marked, has a spigot for later. First thing you want to do is make sure that spigot is closed, because when you start pouring this in, it's going to be really upsetting if it starts dripping all over your floor. or you miss out on all this delicious beer. So
You sound like you're saying this from personal experience.
not in this situation, but I did work in a kitchen, and I have, you know, done some prep work and had something similar where something was open that I thought was closed. And
Okay.
you do all this prep work, you do all this leg work, and all of a sudden it's
All right. Well,
you have to do it again. So you pour about a third of this wort into the fermenter. And the act of pouring it actually adds some oxygen to it. It's hard to see from your perspective, but there's oxygen bubbles that have formed in there. It's just like pouring any other liquid. But this is the point where we're going to add the yeast.
Now, do you add the full set
All
of
this yeast, yes. And now that I've added the yeast, I'm going to pour the rest of this in. As you're pouring, you want to leave a little bit extra in because you're not going to pour the hops in. You're just pouring the wort. And so the hops actually settle at the bottom. And once we do this,
Almost there.
our goal is 5 gallons of beer, which
So this means we have to add.
we each add water.
Wow, more water. See, you can't stay hydrated off more beer.
Here we filled up the fermenting bucket, the primary fermenter, up to the 5 gallon mark. What I have here is a hydrometer, and this is what's called a thief. Now I could take a sample of beer and put it in this sampling jar, but this particular thief is designed for quick hydrometer readings. And I'm just putting it in the bottom carefully because it's glass, I don't want to break it. And the thief, what happens is you put this into the beer and tap that little nozzle here on the side of the bucket, and it will pull some of the beer into the thief. In this initial reading, what we're doing is we're measuring the gravity of this beer that we've concocted. And this is how you're going to determine the alcohol level at a later date once it's done brewing. So the next step is to seal it. So
The very scientific process of this.
and last but definitely not least is the airlock, and I'm going to go fill it with water. I've got a stopper here, a drilled stopper. I'm going to go fill this with water, and then after that we put it in the closet. I've got an internal closet I like to put this in, and we wait a week, and we'll then transfer it to the next step, which is the secondary fermenter.
Okay.
Pretty simple. So this is a 3-piece airlock. This piece goes inside, you fill the water to the line, and then this holds everything in.
Okay.
Pretty simple to use. There's other